It's Council Day! This is the Coast City Editor, Caora McKenna, back for another recap of everything that happened at Regional Council on Tuesday, January 26, 2020, via our Instagram live reporting on Instagram Stories. So this week, there was an update on Halifax 2050, support for the Millbrook First Nation creating a reserve on a portion of the Shannon Park lands over in Dartmouth, and the meeting didn't start until 1, so it's a bit shorter than normal as well. There was some casual joking at the beginning of the meeting about Councillor Pam Lovelace having a not-so-quiet weekend. She had gone out to Peggy's Cove, where folks were gathering to show opposition to the newly revealed changes at the iconic tourist site. The two main sides of this issue are the Leave the Nature Wild folks and the Make Nova Scotia More Accessible Please folks. And we have an honorable mention for the Please Don't Change Anything Ever folks. A lot of accessibility advocates have spoken up on this and the importance of equitable infrastructure. Here's a little look at the latest plan. You'll be watching this on YouTube, so unfortunately you have to rotate it. But there's also a virtual hearing on January 28th at 6 p.m. for folks to ask questions and learn more about the changes. You can also email any questions to peggyscove@developns.ca to learn more. So up first was a short presentation about a development rezoning for 210 and 214 Willett Street. What had originally started as just a site-specific amendment for this location became a larger look at zoning for the general area. There were a few moving pieces to this because there was a recommendation to turn the area you see in the yellow here into a look at the larger area, so you can see below it and around these sort of darker areas being rezoned. Staff suggested rezoning the larger area. Halifax and West Community Council said, no thanks, let's just rezone this one specific one and then do a more holistic look at what's coming for that plan in the years to come. The back and forth from staff and councillors was staff were saying that there's significant interest in those areas from developers. There already are walkable amenities in the area, so you can walk to a grocery store, and it's up for bus rapid transit, which is HRM's sort of goals as far as transit and getting more transit outside of just the downtown area. And also the overall need for more density in HRM everywhere. And then sort of the councillors were arguing for the need for slower planning, thoughtfulness on long-term vision in the area, and more strict rules about design, etc., so that we don't have just like long blocks of 8-foot story buildings. So the motion to make the more sweeping changes was defeated, which meant council voted on just the 210-214 Willett Street changes, and it voted in favor of those. There will be, before that, a public hearing and then a second reading of the proposed changes. Then there was an update on Halifax 2050 for councillors. Last spring, Halifax passed this pretty ambitious climate plan change that had some more aggressive goals than the province. So Shannon Miedema, the city's sort of boss of the environment, was there just to answer a couple questions. The main thing that came out of it was Councillor Pam Lovelace wanted to know if council could get a presentation about the provincial government, from the provincial government, about the Coastal Protection Act and how that will transit to HRM bylaws and the like. And Miedema said that that would happen more likely at the committee level, so the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee, and then make its way to council from there. Then we spent a while talking about solid waste contracts. So that's picking up garbage, recycling, and compost that happens at the end of your street. About 140,000 households in HRM get garbage picked up every other week and recycling every week in varying degrees. There are current zones for garbage pickup, and the contract had expired, so HRM was granting the new contracts based on which companies said they would do the work that was required for the least amount of money. That's how the RFP, request for proposal, and process works in government. So over the next 5 years, HRM will pay about $75 million to pick up the crap that we put at the end of our driveways. And so quick math puts that at $38 per person per year just to get the stuff at the end of our driveway picked up. So here's a breakdown of who is recommended for the contract. You'll see that there are 5 contracts proposed to go to Regroup, and just one to Miller Waste, one to GFL, and one to Leo. J. Beasley. And that's relevant later, but one note that the contracts don't take into account the social policy framework that Lyndall Smith championed and was passed last year. And it mandated that anytime HRM contracts out a service, so people who are contracted to clean City Hall, for example, or clean the streets, that they have to be paid an affordable living wage, because any HRM employee, anyone who works actually with HRM as their employer, is definitely earning a living wage. Staff said that the contract was put out before that it was approved, so it was basically just too hard to make it happen. Councillor Lyndall Smith pushed back on it and said, well, why? Can't we delay it? Can't we postpone it? And staff pretty much said, no, but maybe next time. But these contracts run 5 years at a time, so it'll be 5 years before the people who pick up the garbage are under the umbrella of the social policy framework, which is a bit of a shame. And then so also put in a little bit of thinking here, this article from Vox a couple years ago about what's the point of recycling? Municipalities pick up a large part of the bill on recycling, but as far as consumer capacity to make change in climate change, a lot of the change has to come way higher up the stream. And then we also learned in this lesson, or at least I learned in this meeting, that Halifax actually has a big item pickup, and it's not weekly, it's bi-weekly. It comes with the garbage, but a lot of other people didn't know this. So you can actually put out tables and couches and stuff at the end of your driveway with your garbage, and HRM will pick it up, which HRM pays for, and not every city in the country offers that service. And then so the item to award the contracts went in camera, which happens whenever council is going to discuss salaries or specific details about a public entity or a company or a land that could compromise that business if it's spoken about in public. So they went into camera mainly because Way Mason thought that it was important that HRM limits how many contracts one business gets in the interest of keeping many businesses alive and viable for future waste producers of Halifax. So 20 years down the road, we don't get stuck with Regroup going under, but because we gave all the contracts to Regroup, the other companies went under before that, and then we have no one to pick up the garbage. Spoiler alert, in the camera decision, they decided not to do what Way Mason said, so they kept the contracts as proposed. Then the next agenda item was an endorsement of Millbrook Reserve on Shannon Park lands. This part of the land is part of the larger chunk of the whole Shannon Park land, which came to infamy when they wanted to put a stadium there. The Canada Lands Corp owns the majority of the land in the area, so 87 acres, but there's a 9-acre part around Tufts Cove that's owned by Millbrook First Nation, and they want to put a reserve there, so basically it has to come through Halifax because reserves aren't under municipal jurisdiction. They're technically federal jurisdiction, but ideally they probably want municipal garbage pickup and water and that sort of thing. So there'll need to be some bylaw harmonization to make sure everything, I guess, works. And does this mean there won't be a stadium? Technically, the stadium could have happened with the Millbrook part being whatever it wanted to anyways. It was always split this way. But last year, council voted that it didn't want a stadium at Shannon Park. So there shouldn't be a stadium at Shannon Park, but never say never. And then this is just a graph showing you which portion of the land is the Millbrook lands, and so that was always their land. Then we had Councillor Iona Stoddard introduce the proposal to hand over some HRM land near Park West School to the province in order to build a new pre-primary to grade 8 school on the land that's currently a little bit of forest. She said that she's heard from lots of residents in the area that they welcome the proposal, that they need a new school, they need a bigger school in that area to deal with increasing population. Because of the way the province and municipal relationship works, this land could be sold and there would be no need for a public hearing or any sort of public consultation. But HRM and the province, HRM is saying, no, we're going to do public consultation to make sure that everyone, as many people as possible, are happy and informed. There's also an option from the report to lease the land to the province instead of selling it, and Way Mason likes this idea as a way for HRM to ensure it's able to keep the land in the future if the school closes down one day down the road. Up next, there was a little bit about asset naming, which comes up every once in a while. A new name is added to the list of things, to the list of names that stuff could get named after. So Janet Kitts was added. And then HRM also accepted $110,000 from the family of Shirley Clark to go towards the Dartmouth Commons splash pad. So the splash pad will now be named Shirley Splash Pad. And the Dartmouth Commons splash pad group has done a ton of work in the last few years to get their splash pad. It keeps being kind of pushed away in HRM budgets, postponed into further years, but they said, you know what, no, we're going to make it happen ourselves. So that $110,000 will also help. And we asked our audience, should HRM name stuff after people like streets, or should we learn from the Cornwallis lesson and maybe use numbers or colors or shapes? 62% of people said no, we shouldn't name stuff after people. Up for debate. And then CAO Jacques Dubé came on to give an update on whether or not the convention center could be used as a temporary shelter, which had come up a couple times by different councillors. And eventually they were like, can you please explain to us the process you used to decide whether or not this huge public asset that's been sitting empty can be used? And Dubé said that the convention center is still convention centering, keeping things running on standby to make sure it can hold events, which will resume that the second restrictions are eased. He said it's important to remain focused on its mission, which is planning for and safely hosting regional events. So that was sort of a just large capital N no. And then Councillor Lovelace brought a request for staff report to look at funding a portion of the Hubbard Streetscape Project Community Plan. Councillors Deagle, Gammon, and Cuddle are also asking that staff look at a strategic plan for rural communities, and that was passed by council. Then we got to the end of the garbage and recycling compost debate, which came at the end because it went in camera, and they usually bump those things to the end of the meeting. So yeah, in the meeting, staff enlightened council as to why it recommends giving the majority of the waste removal contracts to Regroup, and council will either be satisfied with that or move forward as staff directed. It was satisfied with that, moved forward as staff directed, and it passed. So that was everything that happened at council today. The next meeting is on February 9th. Any questions or feedback about the Coast City Hall coverage or news in the city can be sent to City Editor Caora McKenna, which is me, who's talking to you right now. You can email news@thecoast.ca. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you're glad that it was narrated and voiced out loud, please let me know in the comments. It's helpful to decide sort of what people are actually getting use from and what's worth doing to help people be informed. Take care.